Countless debates rage online about the worst gun in CS2, with tensions between R8 haters and sawed-off deniers being stronger than the political scene in the United States. Except somehow, debates about literal firearms manage to involve less guns than the United States does. And I mean, everyone's views about the worst gun are valid, except you. You know who you are and what you said. After all, the weapons in CS2 are so different and situational, it would be impossible to compare them and find the one true worst gun. So how could anyone compare an R8 revolver to a sawed-off in order to find out which one is worse? Well, I guess you can call me anyone, because today I'm going to show you exactly how we can compare CS2's guns and find the definitive worst one. But don't actually call me anyone, I feel like that's kind of derogatory towards me. Let me give you a quick rundown of how this will work. Starting off, I'll define what I mean as the worst gun, so there's no confusion. I'm talking about the gun that holds almost no value in ever being used during a match of CS2, as other guns would be far superior in any given circumstance. The Glock is as useful as I would be in Team Spirit's roster when facing an armored player holding A-long with an op, but the gun still holds massive value as a free T-side pistol, especially during pistol rounds. So to find the objective worst gun in CS2, I will be using 4 categories of comparison, and within these categories, the 5 worst guns will be assigned points, 5 for the worst gun in each category, and 1 for the best worst gun? And taking inspiration from Jeffrey Epstein, the higher the overall number at the end, the less you're going to want to use that gun. Before we get into this video, please don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed, as this took me about 40 hours to make, so this is running on full-time job territory. So, moving on to our first category, we will go with the most accurate, informative, undeniably factual piece of information out there: people's opinion in the Reddit comments. So, I made this Reddit post asking CS2 players to tell me what gun they believed was the worst, and I got all of these beautiful responses providing detailed information that is critical to my research, and the mods removed it. So I went through countless other Reddit posts where people asked the same question, along with Steam forum pages and different user tier lists. And with my incredibly advanced form of data collection, I found the top 5 most hated guns according to the CS2 community. And by CS2 community, I mean the comment sections of like 5 Reddit posts and 3 Steam community discussions. The worst gun according to the people comes in at a staggering 18% of votes and is as Cyber_Honey2729 beautifully wrote, the expensive heavy SMG that nobody knows the name of that costs over $5,000 and has really bad damage. Or in other words, the M249. This is followed by the sawed-off with 10% of votes in second, the PP Bison with 9% of votes in third, the R8 with 8% of votes in fourth, and lastly the UMP with 7% of votes in fifth. This means the M249 will be getting 5 points for being the most voted, which remember is very bad, and the least voted gun, the UMP, will be getting 1 point, which is still bad, but not that bad. Kind of like finding out your date is a ladyboy, but there's enough lady going on to ignore the boy.
Oh, big Russian man with a humongous.
I'm so happy I'm gay. I'm so happy I'm gay.
However, after looking at the community's answers, I'm gonna halve the point values for this category so they hold less weight in the final score. People may say a gun is the worst just because they dislike it and not because it is actually terrible, like someone with severe Parkinson's saying the AK is the worst because they can't follow a spray pattern to save their lives. Also, legally speaking, the mentally disabled are allowed to vote, and with the AK Op and Desert Eagle having a combined 9% of votes, I can't really rule out if that was the case here. So honestly, this might not be the most accurate data to form a consensus off of. A man even voted for the defuse kit, for God's sake. But at the end of this category, this is what the leaderboard looks like, with the M249 in the lead as the worst gun. For our next point of comparison, we'll be looking at pro player kills with each weapon. I mean, pro players are probably good at CS2, maybe not better than me, but that's honestly asking for way too much. So I think any gun not being utilized by a pro player is a good sign it is fairly useless. So to gather this data, I went through the top 10 pro teams on HLTV and added together the total kills each player on these rosters had with every CS2 weapon. And well, the top 10 combined kills is essentially what you'd expect. The AK is by far the most used weapon with over 360,000 combined kills, followed by the AWP and both M4s all in the low 100,000s. The default pistols, Desert Eagle, Galil, and MP9 appearing in the top 10 are also as surprising as my negative STD results when I've never touched a woman in my life. but sneaking its way into the top 10 is surprisingly the SG553. As for spots 11 through 30, I won't go over them very much, but here are the charts in case you want to take a look for yourselves. Okay, are you done looking? Seriously, hurry up, everyone else is already done looking. Never mind, I'm just going to keep going. Enough with all these useful guns. What we're really looking for is the 5 worst guns, which in order from highest to lowest kills are the sawed-off with 66, the G3 SG1 with 59, the negev with 44, the revolver with 40, and the M249 with 17. That's right, 17. The M249 had only 3 more kills than grenade projectiles did, and no, not HE grenades exploding or a Molotov burning. I mean the one damage that gets done when you just accidentally throw a grenade at a dude.
It's oh! Dunked on!
Oh yeah, and the M4A1S without a silencer ranked at the bottom with only 10 kills, but I just kept that in for a cool fact. So after this category has been completed, we now have an updated list. The worst ranked gun is still the M249 with 7.5 points, followed by the R8 with 5 points, the sawed-off with 3 points, the negev also with 3 points, and the G3 SG1 with 2 points. Moving on to our third category, we will take a look at the CS2 weapons spreadsheet, which provides detailed information about each weapon, ranging from how much damage each weapon does to how inaccurate each weapon is while standing on a ladder, which we all know is a crucial stat. But all of this data is absolutely useless if we have no way to properly compare weapons with one another. Comparing an AK to a USP would be like comparing Michael Phelps to the Paralympic swimming gold medalist. They're each the best in their respective competition, but they would never stand a chance against each other. So how could we accurately compare weapon stats to find out which ones truly suck? Well, I first took this list and I made it a bit more aesthetically pleasing. You're welcome. I then highlighted all of the weapons that either already have received points or that I believe are in contention for the worst gun in CS2. After this, I grouped each of these highlighted weapons with 2 other guns that would provide a fair comparison. And finally, I went through each statistic and compared the 3 guns. The weapon with the best statistic out of the 3 would be marked in green, the second best orange, and the worst red. After comparing every single stat, I then assigned a score to each weapon, with every green box being worth 3 points, orange being worth 2, and red being worth 1. Let me show you guys all the tables real quick. Up first, we have the pistols, where the dual Berettas, CZ75, and R8 revolver were each tested. Surprisingly, the R8 has amazing stats, and if it weren't for the gun feeling like you have severe arthritis in your hand every time you shot it, it would have been legitimately overpowered. Next, we have the SMGs, where the Bison, MP5, and UMP were tested. Following this, I tested the sawed-off and G3 SG1, and I finally ended off with testing both LMGs. Now, to determine which of the 5 would be the worst ranking weapons in this category, I took the score of each highlighted weapon and subtracted it from the highest ranking weapon of the 2 that it was compared to, as this would show how much better an alternative weapon would be over these terrible guns. And with this, I was given the 5 guns with the largest gap between their competitors. These guns being the M249 with an 18-point gap, the CZ with a 16-point gap, the negev with a 15-point gap, and both the UMP and dualies with a 12-point gap. And with this, our new leaderboard for the weapon that a Silver 1 is most likely to purchase over buying for their teammates looks like this. The M249 is clearly still in the front, having taken first place in every category for the first time in its life. The M249 has 12.5 points, the negev has 6, the R8 has 5, the CZ75 has 4, and the sawed-off has 3. And for the final category of comparison, in order to figure out which CS2 weapons are absolutely terrible, I used the weapon statistics chart from before in an attempt to create a formula that assigns each gun a utility score. To do this, I grouped the guns by their type, pistols, SMGs, shotguns, etc., and separated them into T-side and CT-side loadouts. Then, I created a weighted scoring system where each stat was given a different level of importance depending on how that weapon is usually used. For example, SMGs were scored higher for things like fire rate and movement accuracy, while pistols like the Desert Eagle were rewarded for their one-shot headshot potential and armor penetration. I also adjusted the scoring based on each weapon's strengths and weaknesses. If a gun has great stats but a huge flaw, like high cost or terrible accuracy while moving, that affected its final rank. And finally, after hours on this Excel spreadsheet looking at the Glock's lackluster armor penetration and Scout's disgustingly high jump accuracy, I had done it. I had a bunch of numbers that were still really far off from being able to be used as any meaningful data and had managed to successfully waste about 8 hours of my life. So, I gave up. Okay, I didn't actually give up. I'm not French. Instead, I did what any college student does when they have no idea what to do. I used ChatGPT. Okay, I wish it was that simple. I had to actually use my brain so that ChatGPT would be able to provide me with any sort of meaningful data. The first step was paying for ChatGPT Premium. That's right, we've got business expenses on this channel now. And unlike CS2 skins, the thing I paid for should actually improve my experience. So, with my newly improved AI that I will not be getting extremely angry at in the future, I began feeding ChatGPT information. I gave it information from every single weapon's wiki page, a bunch of tutorials on how to play CS2, such as how the T side and CT sides should be played, and the CS2 economy explained, the earlier data collected from pro player gun usage, and finally, the table with every single statistic of each gun in CS2. I then told ChatGPT to create a utility score for each weapon based on how useful they would be in comparison to their weapons class and the side which they can be purchased on. To do this, I grouped the guns by their type: pistols, SMGs, shotguns. Yeah, you've heard this all before. Let's move on. And the results were, well, a lot better than whatever abomination I had managed to create. So up first are the utility scores of every single gun that can be equipped on CT side. Once again, the R8 is scoring abnormally high here because sadly ChatGPT has never experienced attempting to charge up an R8 shot only to get one tap from 8 different directions, and is heavily influenced by the gun's raw stats. The MP9 is scoring significantly above the rest of the SMGs, which is no surprise, but the op, while not scoped in, is as effective as a prostitute that is waiting until marriage. However, all of the data that does show a variable, such as not being scoped in, burst, rapid fire, and no silencer, will be ignored for this case. Moving over to the T side, we can see the XM dominating in the shotgun category. No, not like that. And the AK obviously has the highest utility score for the rifles, but the SG553 is once again shockingly doing well in second place. But we don't care about any of these guns. What we want to look for are the guns with the lowest utility score. But rather than simply using the 5 lowest utility scores for the guns that would receive points, I'm going to be subtracting the highest utility score from the lowest scoring guns in each category to figure out the difference in utility. And for weapons that appear on both T and CT sides, I will get the respective differences in utility on each side and average out the score. So, here are the weapons with the largest gap in utility. The M249 is once again being greedy in first place with a gap of 8.13, followed by the MP5 with a gap of 6.1, the sawed-off with a gap of 5.12, the Bison with a gap of 3.51, and finally, the Scar 20 with a gap of 3.45. Now, the moment you guys have all been waiting for is here. The worst gun in CS2 is... Yeah, we all knew it was going to be the M249. It took first place in every single category and ended off with 17.5 points. Second place is tied and goes to the sawed-off and Negev with 6 points each. The R8 falls into fourth with 5 points, but really it should have been more if the weapon wasn't catfishing us all with its stats. And lastly, the MP5 and CZ75 are tied for fifth with 4 points each. So let's address the elephant in the room. Oh hey, but seriously, why is the M249 even in the game? In the real world, if you're gigantic, slow, and useless, you're probably just a YouTube mukbanger. But in CS2, you're this? I mean, just look at the stats for yourself. One of the most important stats for rifles and LMGs would be their accurate range of bullets, which would be how far away you can shoot at an opponent before there's deviation in where your bullet lands. Or for those of you with elementary school language comprehension, how far you can shoot each gun from before you can blame the game for missing a shot that was right on his head.
It looked like a headshot.
And just looking at this statistic compared to every other rifle, the M249 has the worst accurate range for both standing and crouching. And while the M249 may have high armor penetration and damage compared to most other rifles, none of this matters, as the M249 has the worst standing and crouching accuracy of any of the rifles. Ignoring its big heavy ass that makes it the least mobile weapon of the bunch, the M249's biggest flaw is undoubtedly its price. At a whopping $5,200, it is the most expensive weapon in all of CS2. Which makes absolutely 0 sense considering that it has no qualities that justify this price. CS2 is a game where economy is crucial. Being short $100 of buying an AK-47 could cost you the round when you lose a 1v1 because you dinked the opponent in the head with a Galil instead of one-shotting them. For the price of only one M249, you could purchase an AK-47, full armor, and full utility, and still have enough money left over to buy a Zeus if you're feeling a little freaky. You would not only be purchasing armor and utility here, you would also be using an objectively better weapon, so the extra items you are purchasing are simply there to just dance on the M249's grave. And with CS2 implementing a loadout system, the M249 has faded even more into obscurity, as no one wants to waste their precious loadout space on a weapon that provides absolutely no value. So how does this make any sense? How could a gun this useless have been left so poorly balanced in Counter-Strike for this long? Well, who said the M249 had to make sense? Who said it had to be useful? The M249 was added to Counter-Strike back in Counter-Strike 1.6, where it was once an actual weapon with power relative to its size. While not being the best gun in the game, it was still a viable weapon and widely used in the Counter-Strike source days as a fun, heavy weapon. But when CSGO released, the M249 saw a drastic nerf that would shift the gun from being fun and usable to reserved only for special trolling occasions. But with Counter-Strike leaning more into its competitive nature throughout the years, the M249 has only become more forgotten, as the gun provides zero utility in an actual competitive match. I could only find one instance of an M249 being purchased in recent professional Counter-Strike, and it was done to rig a bet with 501-1 odds by a Navi team leading Furia 11-2 during Katowice 2022.
Oh my god, Perfecto had an M249, I think.
I saw it.
Yes.
It's on the ground. There is an M249 on the field.
Is that which
It's
Negev's
not
the cheap one?
The
Okay, yeah.
Negev's the wind-up. The M249 will be left behind.
Navi didn't even have the balls to use the gun, they simply bought it and threw it on the floor where the poor M249 belongs. And maybe not belonging with the other guns is what actually brings meaning to the M249. A gun that is so selfless that it is willing to be completely useless for the sake of making every other gun look viable. Maybe your teammate bought an MP5 and is rushing down middle. But you know what? Because he didn't buy an M249, he had the funds left over to also buy you an M4, the only gun that is solely wielded by two sides of the spectrum. Either you are at the pinnacle of Counter-Strike players, asserting so much dominance that you have no shame in purchasing an M249, or you are an infant in your Counter-Strike days, experiencing the game for the first time and thinking, this gun is the most expensive. Surely it's the best. Soon you will find the truth, but only the lies of the M249's price can guide you there. Okay, no, the gun actually just sucks and is useless. Valve, please buff it. Thank you.
Subscribe, 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 subscribe.